Welcome, Jimmy Clark. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Um, how are you doing out there?
Doing pretty good. It's a Friday, so that's always a good thing.
Fridays are always awesome. Absolutely. So I'm really excited to spend some time talking to you about the new album and the movie. And thank you so much for giving me that super secret link to view the movie. It is really amazing. The Easter eggs are crazy, but I still want to know a musical of the Lord of the Rings. That's got to be wow. I just, there's a part of me that would be like, wow, that's amazing. And another part of me would be like, wow, I don't know, man. I mean, that would be a life's work, I think, if you were even trying to be good, in line with the books, right? But yeah, that was pretty
Right?
cool. Yeah, that was an awesome Easter egg. Some of the other ones, I'm not going to tell anybody about them, but I just want our entire TV audience to know that when it comes out, you all got to see this movie. It's really amazing. So, Jimmy, give us a little history on your path as a musician, spirit. I mean, how did you come into being?
Well, I came into music approximately the same time, like seriously, into music around the same time I got into the spiritual work I was doing. Um, Not unlike many other travelers that I've known. I was raised Catholic-ish. And right around the time I made my confirmation, I was like, I just started asking questions that they didn't like me asking.
Mm,
And so I kind of went through the motions, and I never connected to that, and I never felt like it was for me. And that's not to say it's not right for people who choose that path, but it was all around the age of 12 or 13. Prior to that, I didn't know about anything else. I didn't know that there was anything else because I was a kid, and you're doing what kids do when they're kids. As far as how that lined up with the musical aspect of it, I got my first serious attempt at music around the age of 12. Prior to that, my father had I think my father always fancied himself like a wannabe guitar player, and he never really did anything with it. And he loved to sing badly. Um, so one of the first memories I have of music was him buying me like a guitar from the neighbor's yard sale, and I distinctively remember chucking it down the flight of stairs to hear it explode because I just wanted to hear the kabong.
mm.
And somehow that didn't deter him. Maybe he didn't realize I did that, but I then got another guitar somewhere along the line, and that I don't even know what happened to that. I remember it was like a red electric guitar, and I don't even remember what happened to that. But then around 12 years old, I think I asked for it. And I remember I had always tinkered with piano at my grandparents' house. My grandparents had a piano, and I remember I always sat at this piano and played. And we had an electric keyboard in my house. There was my siblings, and I can still hum the stupid preset tunes that are on that thing. um, it was like a old Yamaha type of thing that was just kind of ridiculous. But so I always kind of had music as a tinkering. It was always there, but I didn't take it seriously. And then when I got to be around 12 or 13 years old, that was when I was like, hey, I kind of think I like this. And I attribute that to listening to music. I can remember when I was a little kid, I used to always walk everywhere because I was like I was kind of like a, not terribly, but I was like an overweight-ish young kid. And I used to go for these long walks, and I always had my Discman on me. Remember Discman?
Oh yeah.
And I used to carry around like a little pocket wallet of CDs. In particular, I remember binge listening to the Beatles' Revolver like from a very young age. And like all 12-year-olds in the 90s, I was super into Weird Al Yankovic. Um, and being a Jersey guy, we always had Bon Jovi in the house. So I remember like laying in my bed, maybe before I even started playing actual music, and I remember like listening to music and getting so amped up, I'd like clench my fists and I'd be like drumming along and just raging out to it, like in a good way, where I was like, what? Like this is so connecting to my soul. And my mom was a rocker and into the heavy metal stuff. My dad was 60s. They were both 60s kids, but my dad was like all into like the crooners, and he loved the Carpenters, he loved John Denver. He was more the Pink Floyd guy in the house. My mom was all Ozzy Osbourne, Aerosmith, Guns N' Roses. And I kind of became an amalgamation of that, because to this day I still love the Carpenters and John Denver, and I still love all my hard rock music. So yeah, and then I picked up a guitar and I I dove in. I remember getting a book and I just never turned back. It was like an obsession in my childhood. I would neglect my friends because they'd come over and I'd be upstairs learning how to play songs by like the Offspring and Led Zeppelin and all these kind of things. I just became just radically immersed in it, and it was therapeutic for me as a child. I found my outlet in that, and it kind of traversed over the years. I was playing with other people by the time I was 15 years old. I got pretty good pretty quick because I started diving in and just living. I always remember Richie Sambora has a quote where he just says, he's like, real rock and roll, man. You wake up in the morning, you brush your teeth with it, you put it in your pocket, you walk around all day, you come home dinner night, you put it under your pillow, and you wake up and you do it again. And that's really been my mentality about music my entire life. Is I'm not a weekend warrior. I'm a full-time professional musician, and with no college degree. And I don't only get by, but I thrive on it, and I've made a lifelong career out of it. I got my first band started probably around 15 years old, and I was with that for several years. And then by the time I got out of high school, I had started my own original band, Amber Blues. We were not a blues band, and unfortunately, the name of that band was our undoing, because everybody's like, "Oh, you played a blues," and we're like, "No." It's like it means the silver lining. But and I was with that band for 12 years. We released 3 studio albums. I still have uh an unreleased album and a live album that we did. That band played well over several thousand shows. We did the radio circuit, we toured, we had a van, we had a bank account, like, and we did that for 12 years. And it was where I cut my teeth. um I consider myself a music industry guy, not just a band guy. I spent years going to the music industry conference circuit. So I got educated in copyright law and songwriting and band management and tour management. Like, so I kind of became like self-sufficient, but with a team, to where I ended up stepping into a managerial role with that band. And we did really good. And then that band kind of it just stopped working around 2013. And not so coincidentally, that was the same time that I had decided to exit a marriage I had been in for several years. I got married pretty young. I was with my ex-wife for like 10 years, and the band of 10 years and the marriage of 10 years, the partnership of 10 years, it all kind of like bottomed out around the same time. Not so not so uh, I forget. I don't know the word I'm looking for. It was all in my Saturn return for you witches out there. So it was like, and at the same time that happened, my father was also diagnosed with terminal cancer. My mother was very committed to alcoholism at that point in her life. So the floor fell out. And my band, my relationship, my parents were, and this is classic Saturn return stuff. It was just like, and that's why Saturn lives on my bicep. I'm also a Capricorn, so I like to remind myself who's in charge. But yeah, so after that, that kind of opens the door to where I'm at now. In 2013, I I set out. I spent about a year couch surfing and just kind of floating around and figuring out what I had to do, and then I ended up settling, um, living with my mother and her boyfriend, because they needed the help. I needed a place to stay, and again, she was very entrenched in her alcoholism at that point. And I stepped into a role with all of that. which I'm still in therapy about. But it was in 2013 that I was like, I have nothing. My band is done. And I had devoted so much. We're talking like 3 band practices a week, 3 gigs a weekend, band meetings, financial meetings. Like we were full time. And all that went away in 2013, at which point from there, I had to figure out what I was going to do. And it was this really weird time of like trying to learn how to play the songs that I always was not the lead singer on, or deciding what songs I would continue playing. And obviously, I dove into writing. With that band, I was a little bit more of the second banana when it came to writing. I wrote like, I co-wrote a bunch and I contributed a bunch, but our lead singer in that band was really the guy who spent a lot of the intellectual energy to create the songs. Uh, and so I spent about 10, it's been 10 years. This year is 10 years since that all went down. And I gradually started getting into it myself. I started going into the recording studio. I started writing my own music and figuring out what I was doing as I was going. And I just released The Querent through Clark and Coble Music. And that's the first piece of music I've really formally released since 2013.
Mm.
And the journey from there to now has been it's been immense. Uh, Back in around 2017, I had been working on several studio projects at that point in time. I've got a number of things that will eventually be coming out. But in 2017, that was when I met Josh Coble, my music partner. We were in a band together, and that band really didn't work out too well. But I saw his talent. He had such a voice and such character, and such quality of character that we linked up, and I was like, hey, like it was kind of like dating. I was like, hey, would you would you want to like work on some stuff without this band? Have you ever written music? And he's like, well, and Josh was always very like humble and kind of he was a little meek. And he was like, well, I have this, a couple songs I've written. And mind you, he had a degree in music. He went to school and he got a degree in it and I didn't. So we came from very different worlds. And Josh felt like he was very oppressed by his education because he didn't feel supported by his professors and stuff. And he had not the best positive uh, musical self-esteem coming out of college, but he did have immense self-esteem when it came from the theater world. And Josh was a Christian. And so he was very involved with his church. Men in Harmony was like his vocal group that he was in his whole life. And he really had the whole other side. I had like the going to dive bars and sleeping in the back of the van, driving to real places. And he was, singing in churches on Saturday morning and doing plays during the evenings. So when we came together, we sat and I said, well, you've got your song. How about we develop your song? And I've got a song that I could use your voice on. That song is called Lover's Moon. That's one, if anybody's ever seen me around the festival circuit doing the open mics or Bardic circles, that's kind of like been my go-to song. It's like a pagan flavored love song through the seasons. And from there, it just kind of spiraled. And that brings us how we got into the tarot, which is Josh and I were doing these writing sessions and recording. And I was like, all right, well, what else do you got? And he said, I have this song called The Fool. And I was like, the tarot fool? And he was like, well, more like a steampunk fool. Because he was very into steampunk culture. He loved it so very much. And he had like the corsets and the big feather hats. I've actually got a hallway in my home is dedicated to memorabilia from mine and Josh's work together. And I actually have his boots and I have his hat and I have his Renaissance mask. His parents were so kind as to gift those to me. But it started with the Fool, as the Fool's journey always begins. Kind of and we got that song done and we recorded it and we were like, this felt really good, we should keep going. And I was like, all right, well, what else do you got? And he said, well, I have this lullaby. And he showed it to me and I was like, well, is that's kind of like a tarot type thing too, isn't it? And that turned into She of the Earth, which is the Empress. And it's kind of like potato chips, you say you're going to eat just one. And and it was like much like the Fool's journey would go. It started with the Fool and then we kind of hopped over to the Empress. And at that point I started getting my wheels turning. I was like, well, like what's next? So, okay, we skipped the magician. So how about I write that one? I'll just write it to see if I can write it. And I sat down and I wrote the magician. I went in the recording studio, much like I did with a lot of these songs on these projects. And I went in with a blank slate, one of my recording styles I've developed because I've been recording since I was like 14 years old. I started playing guitar around 12 or 13. I was already in the recording studio trying to do stuff by the age of like 13, 14 years old. Um, and so I wrote the magician in the studio. I went in and my guitar is not just handy right over there, but I went in the studio and I kind of was like, all right, well, let me just come up with this riff. Actually, no, why not? Let's make this a scratch and sniff podcast, huh? So
All right, let's do it. That'll be awesome.
I went into the studio and Joey Papa, he's one of my musical soulmates because we've just done everything together since the beginning of my second half of my musical life. And I went in the studio. There's a pick in there. Oh, and this, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between, is a working musician's guitar pick when you don't have a pick on the gig. So, all right, it's in tuned enough. So, I went in the studio and sat down, and like I always do, I was like, all right, well, just hit record and I'll see what I come up with. And so I came up with. And that's always been one. That's a little out of tune, but that's always been one of my go-to fire circle riffs when I've been out and out at Mayfire with Jeff McBride and Abby Spinner, and I've had my guitar. Like I was kind of for a long time the guy who walked fire circle with an acoustic guitar, and that was always one of my go-to like walking mantra riffs. So I was like, well, the magician, and I related it directly to my work with Alchemical Fire Circle through both Mayfire, Vegas Vortex, as well as Tri-Fire Alchemy, and prior to that, it was through an event called Fires Rising that I was at for many years. So tying that into the spiritual concept, it's like I consider I've even recently re-identified myself. I really don't identify. I did for a long time, but I kind of reacclimated my perspective where I don't really identify myself as a pagan these days. I identify more as a witch. Though for to kind of back cycle, we'll get back to that. I like to flippity floppity, but while this whole thing was going on with the musical world, on the backside, right around the same time I started getting really serious about guitar. I had gone to a Walden Books. See the gray in my beard? That's Walden Books being mentioned. I went into. Well, you said you're from New York, so you know Walden Books.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So I'm a Jersey boy. So Walden Books, I went in there and somehow Spirit led me to the New Age section, and I stumbled upon Silver Ravenwolf's Teen Witch. And I remember my mother and I were going on a trip up to visit like one of our relatives who lived in North Jersey, like in the mountainous area. And I brought this book with me. And, we're driving. My parents were always into cars. So my mom had this like sweet little Miata or an RX-7 and, with the top down. So we're driving up the mountains and she's blasting whatever cool music she was listening to. And I have this book and I'm sitting there reading it, and I felt this instant connection to it that I never felt when I was doing Christianity. I got in trouble in CCD because I was the one that started asking questions that like were also commingling with like, sex ed in school. And I was like, if she was a virgin, how did there was a baby? And they didn't like that kind of stuff. And then they said, immaculate conception. And I was like, come again? So, and that clashed with the history lessons that we were learning about that part of the world at that point in time. I think I got in trouble as I said, did she lie? And that was the end of it. That was the end of it. They were like, all right, we don't like these questions you're asking. You're not allowed to do this. And I was like, okay. So I walked away, but I remember driving with my mom up to this area, and I was reading Teen Witch, and she has the waterfall meditation in that book. And that resonated with me. So I remember I went home and I did that. I sat in the shower and I imagined the white light, washing over me and doing the deep breathing. For a 13-year-old, that's a pretty deep thing to connect to. It was just like, whoa, like I'm doing this practice. And obviously, after that book and I connected, I went back and I bought my first tarot deck, which I completely didn't use. It was the Rider Waite Smith deck, and it lived in my drawer. The cards were everywhere. But I remember when we moved out of our house, I remember I did manage to locate and find every one of those cards from that deck, despite like 10 years between and it moving from a drawer to another drawer to being under my bed. Somehow that deck stayed in place. And it's funny that the tarot has been kind of secretly hiding in plain sight with me my whole life. And truth be told, considering I'm a tarot guy who made the movie and the music, I don't fancy myself a tarot reader. I don't know. I don't really fancy myself a reader, but I consider myself an interpreter of what we've done. And so, this whole time I'm getting into music and I'm starting to find the witchcraft stuff, playing with pendulums. And eventually, around 2012, 2013, when I was going through my Saturn return stuff, I stumbled into a full moon meeting that my friend's mother, she was like, well, my mom runs these pagan groups, and they do full moon meetings, and they do all the Sabbats, and they do all this stuff. And so I started going to it, and I found community, and I found connection. And so I spent the better part of like close to the knot of probably like, I want to say like maybe 7 years, working my way through the initiatory process of being inside of that coven. We became more of a tradition because at one point I think we had like 20 members, so it was a tradition at that point. We were an established church. We had like a home, like there was like a coven stead, and we did ritual. And I went through the blue cord and the yellow cord process. I was in process to do my priest training, and that was when I decided that I really wasn't in alignment with that group anymore, and I felt like it wasn't something I wanted to pursue. So I kind of walked away from coven dynamic ritual magic at that time. And then through my mentor of that coven, Co-Capelli, Arnie Reese Erickson, he was like, well, you need to go check out these other events. And that's ultimately how I came into pagan festivals. And Starwood was one of them. My roommate, Oberick, who some people may know in the scene, he was like, you got to go to Starwood, man. And I always heard about Starwood for years and years and years, never really knew what was going on with it. But yeah, my first events were, at I'm like hesitant to mention the place because they've developed a pretty bad reputation, unfortunately. But things at that location with those events kind of went sour, not with me personally, but it was more of a community implosion. And so with a lot of other people, I kind of took the exodus and moved away from that. But through that tradition, I learned about alchemical fire tradition, or alchemical fire circle. I learned about, standing stones. I learned about just a lot of these really, really sacred activities that go on in those worlds. And once that community kind of fell apart, then I started finding myself in pagan festivals in the Northeast, up in like Massachusetts and Connecticut and New Jersey. And then I migrated gradually across Pennsylvania and found myself in Ohio. And that's kind of the chapter I've been in for the last 7 years now, is as my music career has kind of been going down this trajectory of making pagan friendly music and spiritual. I don't want to say spiritual music because it's not like Enya. I'm not over here doing, doing that kind of stuff. But it's, I call it pagan centric, and definitely music for witches and people who are into that. But so yeah, and it all kind of has come to a bottleneck now where I'm at this point where the pagan music that I've been doing it's ready. We're just getting ourselves to a point where we can confidently and effectively get it out to the world, utilizing all those years of music industry knowledge that I gained. And even in my spiritual life, the recent decision to stop identifying myself as a pagan and more of a witch has felt right. And that's been kind of a long time coming. When I was in the coven, I took on a magical name, and one of my ex partners kind of pointed out that the magical name wasn't like what I thought like, I had a different impression based on the lore that I had read and stuff. And when you go a little deeper, I was like, I don't really feel like I connect to this magical name. And I gradually decided that I was not going to use a magical name because for me, I don't need to hide my identity in public or private. And I don't necessarily feel the need to be anybody but myself when I'm working with spirit or magic with a K. So I abandoned using magical names many years ago, and I stopped working in coven dynamics, and I kind of became a little bit more of a bard and a wandering teacher and educator. And the point I'm at now in this journey is that this music is out there, and in my spiritual practice, I still do the stuff that I know how to do. I still do ritual magic, more of a solitary, but I believe more than anything, I identify with the alchemical fire model, primarily influenced through my work with Tri-Fire Alchemy and the Mayfire Vegas Vortex, Jeff McBride and company. So that was your
Wow.
40-minute answer.
Wow, that was awesome. No, I love it. As a fellow Capricorn, I love Capricorn answers. So,
What's your birthday?
that's December 25th.
January 6th.
Oh, that's the same birthday as my mother, by the way.
Ah, it's a good birthday. The Christians will call this the Epiphany, and certainly lots of
Exactly.
those in life.
Exactly. So, okay. So, first of all, that the song that you released, the new song is fantastic. The Quaron, and of course, that's on the Cauldron and IPR right now. And so people can go and listen to that on the Cauldron, which is the cauldron.net. Is the streaming? It's the WDADB. Yeah. Sorry.
Slow
Yeah.
down, slow down, slow down.
Yeah. Yeah. So come and listen to it on the cauldron.net. That's pretty awesome. Um, and, again, thank you for the ability to pre-watch before the release on the movie, which I spent, the time this morning, as you know, as I kept sending you little messages every time I found something cool. But one of the things is that you collaborated with several of the elders of the community in that movie,
Yeah.
and over on Zell, grandmother Elspeth. Can we talk a little bit about that? I mean,
Yeah.
how that came into being, and
Yeah.
things like that.
So with I'll kind of lead into that. So when Josh Coble and I started doing this project, as I said, that we started with the Fool, and then we went to the Empress, and then I kind of took it upon myself to do the Magician. And we tried in the beginning to do it in order, and the tower was like, no, you're gonna live this process the way I am going to dictate it to you. So we ended up working on the music very much led by spirit, and the sense that, and I don't mean that like in a foofy woo woo way. It's like stuff would be going down in our lives, and inadvertently the art that we were writing or creating, or the songs that, or the riffs that would come out, it would just resonate. So we went from starting to try to do an order to bouncing all over the place. And uh, the music is really comes from a lot of different places. Some of it came from my old stock. For example, the Wheel of. Did you like the Wheel of Fortune? Did you get a
I
little?
love the Wheel of Fortune. That was awesome. Oh, I still got to tell you that "Come Unto Me" is my favorite song.
Wow, and that's pretty wild because like Josh is smiling up in his heaven right now because that was one of the songs when we tried to write that. I was like, homie, I got no idea what to do for the Hierophant. Like, I got no idea. And he was like, well, I want to write this like Handel's Messiah. And that's again, Josh had the classical Christian music background. So I was like, it's all you, buddy. You got this one. And he comes out with the whole like, come unto me. And
Yeah,
I'm
it's
like,
amazing.
I'm like, okay, dude, like the magician, I'm all like, rah, like my
Yeah,
James
you
Hetfield
are. Yeah, you
Metallica
were.
voice. And the Hierophant was so reflective of Josh. But so for songs like the Hierophant, and I'm getting to the elders part here, but like the Wheel of Fortune, for example, that was an Amber Blues song, but I rewrote it. It was one of my original Amber Blues songs.
Hmm.
And it's funny because at the time I had called it A Million Second Chances. That was the title of the song.
Mm.
And when it came time to write these songs, I was like, I still have these songs that I never recorded or released. And I do actually have the Amber Blues version, the studio version of that Wheel of Fortune earlier
Wow.
version. But
Wow.
so that'll be out there someday. But so Josh and I kind of like were playing hot potato with the music. He took the Hierophant. I took the Magician. We came together like on Justice, for example. And Josh was so mad at me when we did Justice because I kind of was like, you work on Justice. And the idea he originally presented to me, like I was like, yeah, I was like, nah. I was like, he was like, I worked all weekend on that. And I was like, I'm sorry, but I don't think it's gonna work for the project. So, we came together and it turned into a thing. Like Justice, for example, if you notice the vocals, like he and I are trading lines back and forth. It's two different singers, and then we come together and we're finishing each other's sentences and that. And it's kind of like almost more of like a hip hop, but not rhythmically or tonally hip hop, but
Right.
the trading back and forth. So when it came to Judgment, it was one of those cards. I sat with it and I sat with it, and I just could not come up with anything. I was like, I don't know what to do with this one. And Josh was like, again, he applied his life experience as a Christian. He said, well, when I see this card, I see a life well lived. And that was the premise of that. Originally, Judgment was going to be a pay. We were going to do it as like a bolero, like dun, 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 dun. That's why we start the song with the snare drums, because the original concept was to be pagans in the military.
Mm.
And I had actually started the process of reaching out, like my mentor Cocapelli, as you saw in that video. He had he had a whole service career in the military. And I had reached out, and people, like, I was looking for like Marines. I wanted to get somebody from every branch of the military. We were going to do like a kind of like a biopic on each of those, because that's one thing with this project is every one of these songs is in fact real stories, real people. The Empress is like a pagan woman who is big round with pregnancy, and we got the baby in there. And the guy in the Magician video is actually like a lifelong seeker who does, he did all the Christopher Penzick stuff and all those kind of things. And so when it came to Judgment, we were going that same route. We were like, well, military. But then I started like contemplating on it, and I was like, well, instead of doing the military thing, it was kind of proving a little hard to make that work. I was like, well, why don't we focus on the elders, and let's make it like a dedication to the work that those in our lives, who we came to know specifically, had impact on us. And that turned out to be Oberon Zell, who has been very involved with this. Did you like him as Zeus, by the way, in the Chariot?
Oh, that was awesome. That was awesome.
In the Chariot, that's a functioning board game, right? We created a board game for that scene.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have we here at White Raven, we do a monthly board game thing, and it'd be interesting to get together and deal with that. So
I
please go
didn't say
ahead.
it was a
So
good game.
Oberon, man.
I didn't say it was a good game or highly functional, but we did make a game. We have playing cards. We got pieces made. But yeah, so we worked with Oberon, and my mentor Cocapelli was so instrumental to that, and grandmother turtle Elspeth, and Dana Corby. Now,
Hmm.
Arnie is truly kind of like the nucleus. Cocapelli is kind of the nucleus of where that whole collection of people came from. Because as you saw in the video, as a military man, he was like north, south, east, west. He was going where the Pentagon sent him. And so he collected like these communities. And ultimately, like when we first got together, we were doing, we were doing like a combination of like 90s music and pagan stuff that he did, and we were doing like Wild Mountain Time, and these different songs. But ultimately, Arnie brought into the picture the music of Gwydion Pentawyn. And so, early on with Arnie, we're all doing, well, if you'll be my lady love and come sit down near me. We're doing like Witch's Coven dance, and we're doing this Lunasa dance and all this. And at the time, I had no idea. And Arnie was like, "Oh, these are just folk songs." And I was like, okay, cool. So I can record them and not have a problem because they're like public domain, right? And I ended up coming into information that like I was like, oh no, this wasn't just public domain music. Like there was albums here, and that breadcrumb trail led me to Oberon because I started researching. I was like, well, who the hell owns this stuff? Like, who do I talk to about the licensing? And I discovered Oberon, and it's funny because I had just met him like 4 months prior at Starwood at Wisteria, and so I call him. I'm like, hey, he's like, hello. And I'm like, is this the Oberon I met at the festival this year? And he's like, well, why, yes, it is.
That's
And
Oberon.
well, it's funny because like I'm over here like, hey, guy, I'm from Jersey. You got these songs I want to do. What's going on? Talk to me. And he was just like, and I didn't realize I was talking to like, one of the top three most influential pagan minds. So there was this fun candor to when I first met him, where I was just so not starstruck by him. And then I come to learn who he is. I'm like, oh damn. I'm like, but that's why I love my connection with him. Because when I met him, I wasn't like, pardon my French, I wasn't kissing ass. I was like, yo, you got these songs. Apparently you're the guy who is the publisher of these. Like, so let's, how do we do this? And it turned, and the conversation evolved and it evolved. And through Oberon, I started asking more questions, and that's how I found out about Dana Corby. Now, as it turned out, Kokopelli also knew Dana Corby from his time out in Washington. And so she gets brought into the conversation, and I had met Elspeth at also, I believe, Wisteria. And it's funny because Elspeth and I ended up sharing, like, we were walking in the same neighborhood my entire childhood. I'm from a town called East Brunswick, New Jersey. Um, and apparently Elspeth had lived in East Brunswick for like a very long time. She was connected very closely to my pagan, my coven people, who, and I'd never heard of her, I'd never seen her, never anything. But when I met her, we had a connection, and I start to learn that she's like, well, I lived in East Brunswick, for about 30 years, you know, and so that connection grew, and just this knit of these elders became very, very prominent part of the work with this project. And and come time around the pandemic, and I remember people like I was getting a lot of crap from people for this, but it was the decision of the elders, which is that when the lockdown on the East Coast ended, it was like late June, and we were watching this thing like we were watching the timeline where they were like, okay, like public events of up to 10 people are now open. Public events of now up to 50 people are open. Okay, well, we can go to a concert with 200 people. And we took a chance before it opened. And Oberon, we had a conversation with Oberon, Dana, Elspeth, and Arnie and Kokopelli. I keep jumping between the magical name. His name on social media is Arnie Kokopelli, so it's not like I'm outing him. But we asked them, do you guys like still want to come out and do these videos and hit the studio? And they were like, yes. I got that firm yes. Like Elspeth drove from Kaiser, West Virginia to East Brunswick,
Wow.
New Jersey. It's like a 5-hour drive. She drove in her truck, and she was like, I'm going to need your help getting my rocking chair out the back, but I'll do what you need
Yep.
me to do.
That's Elspeth. That's grandmother.
And so we had them out, and we did the work. We filmed like that weekend. Some people are like, it takes like like a week to film a music video effectively and to do all the production. We filmed 5 music videos in one day.
Wow.
And it was with me and one cameraman. I had scripted everything I wanted. I had all the locations picked. I had people positioned in pods, and everybody was masked up and stuff in between. Because that was the thing is like there were people in the community that were pissed off at us because they're like, "What are you doing? Why are you bringing our most precious elders to your party to do this?" I was like, they insisted, and we heeded the call. We listened to them. We're taking our lead from them. And so we ended up filming the videos, and it was crazy. They were out for like 4 or 5 days, and we filmed videos for a day or two. The next day after the big shoot that we did a lot of the footage that would end up being the interludes for the film. And we went to the recording studio and we recorded voiceover narration. And And we one of the things about the Gwydion music, kind of tying that back in, is that's one of the other projects. While Josh and I were working on the tarot, we had downtime, so we were recording other projects at the same time in tandem. Like we'd have like 5 songs in the mix process for the tarot, and in the meantime, we were recording almost the entire Gwydion catalog. Like I have 25 songs that we recorded from the Fairy Shaman and Songs for the Old Religion, and we recorded stuff that even Gwydion himself never recorded. Like Arwen is one of the songs, and I forget the other one, but there's a bunch. So while we were doing this, we were recording a catalog of this first generation pagan American folk music, and Oberon sings on one of them with us. So
Mm.
on the song "The Sun God," Dana Corby's song, "He was the Sun God."
Yeah.
One of the things we did for that was fascinating was Dana recorded that in like 1974, 1975. And when she was, as she put it, when she was like, when I was young and feral.
Yep. Yep. That's Tina.
And so it's funny because, well, I was like, well, I want you to record this again at 75 years old. So I have a version of the Sun God, and we did it more like the Doors. We actually made it like psychedelic, funky music,
Oh, right on.
and she sang it like 40 years later. And Oberon's on that song. We added some stuff to the composition of the song where, like, we had this backing vocal where it goes like, where Oberon's going, "He was the Sun God. He was the Sun God," and it's like, again, see him.
Yep. Yep.
But so we've done these projects, and the elders have been so invaluable to the process, and they've been so informative, and they've really, in a lot of ways, like supported this, because like Oberon was like, this tarot project is important, this Gwydion project is important, we need to do this, you need to do this. And Elspeth, this Elspeth has accomplished so much in her life. And when I asked her, I was like, would you be in our film and would you narrate it and be the voice of the movie? She was like stoic about it. She was like,
Mm-hmm.
she's like 93 or 91 or 92 at the time. I think she was like 90 or 91 at the time. And she was like, we're doing this. And she
Mm-hmm.
like, she showed up and she did it, and she rocked it. And so yeah, the elders have been incredible. And I'm glad I picked the elders that I did, because I have a very interwoven, unexpected, synchronicitous connection to all of them that goes back to my childhood before I even knew
Mm-hmm.
this thing. And so all roads have led here. And so with Judgment, that song, Josh made it a life well lived. That was his idea. We did work on the lyrics together. He came up with the concept, and we made it so every verse in that song is another stage of life. And we put the trumpeter, lead on, great trumpeter, I'll heed your call to
Mm-hmm.
the mountain halls. Lead on, great trumpeter, the time has come, my work is done. And as it turned out, like, well, we haven't talked about this yet. We can get into this a little bit, but Josh died last year, 35 years old. He was visiting me for a work week. We were working on the companion book. The tarot movie actually has an 800-page companion book that we wrote, which outlines the entire backstory and this is what still gives me goosebumps, is like Capricorn moment. I'm like, all right, Josh, like, we're going to do a photo shoot every 3 months. And I want you to write down your reflections about the writing process. I had him do all of this stuff in real time. And when he died, um, I have his thoughts. I have pictures of him. I have 10,000 pictures. And there will never be more words from Josh. There will never be more words expressing his heart of where this music came from and what it meant to him. And there's never going to be pictures of him again. But this project is his legacy. And at his funeral, I believe when I did like a eulogy, and I talked about Judgment and how it was so strange to me that he had written a song about, he had conceptualized a song of a life well lived, and that like we're celebrating his well-lived life.
Mm-hmm.
And hearing him sing that song, I mean, and with Judgment, I mean, tell me that his magnum opus at the end where he's all like, leave me at
Oh
home.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
but yeah, Josh died last August, and the tragedy is that he never saw the movie. It was a Saturday when he passed away, and we were supposed to watch it on Sunday, and he never got to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like there's this weird melancholy, bitter at timesness about, that I have to do the thing, which sometimes feels like spiritual bypassing, where I have to be like, I'm
Yep,
not angry. He's watching. He's still watching. He's still watching.
yep.
But I'm like, damn it, Josh! I wanted you to see it because he was always such a fretter about it. He was like, well, when's it going to be done? When's it going to be done? When's it going to be done?
Mm-hmm.
And he almost got to see it, and well, frankly, it pisses me off that he didn't.
Uh-huh.
But so
So,
yeah, so
so where are we at? When do you think the movie will be produced? When will we have other songs out there? How can people get in touch with you? This is a time, here at the end, just to let people know how to connect with you, because I think that's important.
yeah. Well, we have a website, clarkandcoble.com, CLARK, no E, I'm not that British, CLARKAND, not an ampersand, Coble, KOBEL. So clarkandcoble.com. We have a beautiful website that was designed very, very much not by my hand, but with my input by the harpist Maven Stone. She did a fantastic job of building that website for us, and we are beyond grateful that website's there. It looks fantastic, and she really kicked ass on that. And there's a Facebook page under the same name. There's an Instagram. People will notice that our numbers are pathetically low on most of these platforms. And that's because we've been spending so much time making the music and getting the film together that we hadn't yet gotten into the social media promotional aspect. But I also have this feeling that I want people to come to it. I don't want to chase people.
There you go.
And I feel like
There
that's
you
part
go.
of the magic work. So people can find us through there. Obviously, the trail. Oh, well, there's a trailer, and that's on YouTube. You had mentioned possibly wanting to play a part of the song or the trailer,
Yep.
um, depending on how long you want to go. I mean, and here's the funny thing. Here's the funny thing, Alfred. Like we could do 10 more of these episodes, and there's that many stories to tell. So
Oh
anytime
yeah,
you
oh
want,
yeah, and I'm
anytime you
thinking that
want to do,
maybe we're gonna come back and revisit it after I talk to my producer. So
yeah.
yeah.
So that's where people can find us on social media. As far as the release strategy, I'm working with my legal team on that. We have some paperwork that we're filing, and there's kind of it puts a pecking order to when and how things are going to come out. But the current plan is that I'm going to release one more song. I have not yet decided. I feel like I could have done Death for Halloween or Samhain, or I could have done the Devil. Tell me you love the Devil video, though, right?
Oh, it was amazing.
The
And the
black and white.
juxtaposition going from the double to the next one, oh my God. I was just like, what
Yeah, and
just
the Devil's one
happened?
of my favorite ones. Big shout out to Richard Biggs, Jaguar in the scene. He brought the creepy to that so hard.
It was so creepy.
I remember I was in Vegas after Mayfire, Jeff McBride's The House of Mystery or the Mansion of Mystery, and I showed him the Devil video. And if you know Jeff McBride, he exudes this excitement when it comes to magic. And when we were watching, he looks over at Abby and he's like, "Ooh, look at that guy." He's like, "Ooh," that's like the level of characters we brought to these people. It was fantastic. But yeah, so the movie will be coming out fairly soon. This is the plan as I'm currently trying to put it together, which is I'm going to figure out which song I want to release next. And then I'm going to do for paperwork reasons, I kind of have to do it this way, which is I either have to do a premiere. That would be in New Jersey. I would be doing that at the theater that the full video takes place, and that's the Boundbrook Theater in Boundbrook, New Jersey. That great, amazing theater with that ceiling. But I'm going to be doing an online release. All right, so yeah, we will be releasing at least one more song before we do any of the film premiere, but the film premiere has been bumped forward. The original plan was to try to release a bunch of the music and then work into doing the film premiere, but my legal team, based on the needs of the paperwork, have said that we need to release the movie before we do all that other stuff for the paperwork purposes. So we'll be releasing at least one more song in the short term. And then from there, I'm going to be doing an online release. It's not going to be a full blown release. It's going to be a limited release for the short term, just to meet the needs of what we have to do on the back end. But that will be somehow figured out. It's not out yet. Like we have to still figure out what platform we're going to use, and we will be utilizing that as a fundraiser type of thing because we do have some stuff that we need to pay for. So we're going to probably do like a limited online ticketed or donation based event, and it'll probably be like available for like a week or something, and it'll be up for the world to check out. And then we're going to pull that down and then get back to starting to release the music, at which point I will then start planning an actual in-person premiere here in New Jersey. And the plan from there is to tour the movie all around starting next spring, and taking it to various festivals and taking it to various locations, art houses, theaters. I've been in talks with several festivals over the year. In fact, we did do one sneak peek release premiere at Sirius Rising at Brushwood this past year. And there's a chance that that might pop up there again. I intend to apply it to all the other pagan festivals that I'm aware of that want to have it. And yeah,
let's talk later about Three Gates Gathering, which is next year Labor Day. That's our festival here in Missouri. Let's talk about that. We have a huge stage and broadcast capability there. So you and I will talk later about that.
I'm into it. So yeah, so that's the whole release. That's the current release strategy. Just to add a little of the human element behind it. This year was really, it was really difficult to carry this project on in Josh's absence this year because he was my co-captain on this project.
Mm-hmm.
So things moved at a different pace because of that, and we're starting to pick up the pace again now. Feeling his energy, supporting it as always behind it. So it's been a labor of love and a very very involved process to get this. I got to just tell you, people, releasing a song is like easy peasy. Releasing a film that's not only just a film, but it's like a rock opera that also has all these other moving components. Big wheels keep on turning. you know,
Yep.
uh, you know, bale fires keep on burning.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of exciting stuff coming out. The one other thing I would like to plug is for those of you who really want to hear more about the process behind the stories, on the website, clarkandcoble.com, you can find a section where I have blogs. I have two blog platforms on there. One is called Letters to Josh, and that is with every turning of the wheel of the year and on special occasions, I have found it healing for me and connective to. I write Josh letters, and I just talk to my partner and my friend who I can't talk to in the real world anymore. So that's one of the blog posts I put out there, and the other one is called The Fool's Journal, which is my kind of like blockety blockety blah. This is what's happening behind the scenes, and this is where we're at with the project. So it is more of a journal in that aspect. But I do like people to read the blogs because there's a lot of information in there. And when this project comes out, there will be the movie, there will be the music, there will be the art, there will be the companion book that goes with it. And I do intend to do a podcast series as well. So we're going to be feeding you guys Clark and Coble content for a long time.
Awesome,
And
awesome. And Fringe TV is going to love having all that stuff. So you're all about it. We're all about it.
Yeah. So did you want to play the song or play any of the trailer or anything of that nature?
Yeah, we're gonna play the trailer here as we end. And I just want to thank you, Jimmy, for all the time you spent with me. And I look forward to our next conversation. Thank you very much.
Blessings
Namaskar.
and blessings to you, sir.
Come on in. Sit down. Let Grandmother Elspeth tell your cards for you.
tell my cards?
These are tarot cards. They'll tell you something about your life's journey, and they're all going to have lessons to teach you. As you walk your path, you will have to decide things for yourself. Are you going to be a helper or a hinderer? How are you going to know if you don't get up and start walking? And that is just the beginning.